blocking Earth backfired. They found themselves caught. The council chamber floated in the darkness of space, a massive station where representatives from 100 worlds gathered to decide the fate of civilizations. Today, they had gathered to discuss a problem. A small blue planet on the edge of the galaxy had caught their attention, and not in a good way. Ambassador Threx stood at the center of the chamber, his tall frame casting shadows across the holographic display. The display showed Earth, rotating slowly with red markers highlighting areas of conflict and destruction. Threx belonged to the Velcron Empire, the oldest and most powerful civilization in the Galactic Council. His species had brought peace to thousands of worlds, and he took great pride in that achievement. Members of the Council, Threx began, his voice echoing through the chamber. We have completed our observation of the planet designated as Earth. The dominant species calls themselves humans. After watching them for 50 of their years, I must recommend immediate action. The hologram changed, showing images of human warfare. Explosions tore through cities. Weapons of incredible destructive power reduced entire landscapes to ash. Humans fighting humans over and over again throughout their history. These creatures are dangerous, Threx continued. They have discovered atomic energy, but instead of using it for progress, they built weapons. They have reached their own moon, yet they cannot stop fighting among themselves. They are aggressive, stubborn, and utterly unwilling to unite even in the face of extinction. A representative from the Quellen Collective raised a tentacle. Perhaps we should make contact. Guide them toward peace? Threx shook his head firmly. We tried that approach with the Krandor species 3,000 years ago. Do you remember what happened? They turned our own technology into weapons and nearly destroyed an entire sector before we stopped them. Humans are worse. Much worse. The chamber filled with murmurs of agreement. Everyone remembered the Krandor incident. It had taken centuries to repair the damage. Then what do you propose? Asked another council member. Threx's expression hardened. Protocol 7. Total isolation. We seal their solar system with a barrier. Nothing gets out. We give them 500 years to either mature into a peaceful species or destroy themselves. Either way, they remain contained. The galaxy stays safe. The vote was unanimous. Earth would be quarantined. 3 months later, Captain Han Jiwoo sat in the command chair of the Horizon, Earth's most advanced spacecraft. The vessel floated near the edge of the solar system, conducting routine surveys. Jiwoo loved these missions. Out here, away from the politics and problems of Earth, he could almost imagine humanity reaching the stars. Captain, I'm picking up something strange, said Lieutenant Park Minji from her station. She was the ship's chief scientist, a brilliant quantum physicist who had joined the mission to study deep space phenomena. Strange how? Jiwoo asked, sitting up straighter. There's an energy reading forming at the system's edge. It's massive, sir. Growing by the second. Minji's fingers flew across her console, pulling up data streams. I've never seen anything like this. Before Jiwoo could respond, the view screen lit up with a blinding light. When the glare faded, they saw it. A wall of shimmering energy stretched across space, curving away in all directions. It surrounded their entire solar system like a bubble. What in the world? Whispered Engineer Kang Taeho, staring at the barrier with wide eyes. Try to contact Earth Command, Jiwoo ordered, fighting to keep his voice steady. All channels. Already trying, sir, the communications officer replied. There's interference, but I'm getting through. Earth Command is seeing this too. Every monitoring station is reporting the same thing. Over the next few hours, the full scope of the situation became clear. An energy barrier had appeared around the entire solar system. It extended beyond Pluto, encasing every planet, moon, and asteroid in Earth's neighborhood. Probes sent toward the barrier simply stopped when they touched it, their systems shutting down instantly. Dr. Park Minji worked tirelessly to understand what they were facing. She ran test after test, scanning the barrier from every angle. What she discovered both fascinated and terrified her. Captain, this isn't natural, she reported during an emergency briefing. This is technology. Advanced technology, far beyond anything we can create. Are you saying someone built this? Jiwoo asked. Someone put this here deliberately? Yes, sir. The energy signature is too perfect, too stable. This barrier is designed to last. And there's something else. Minji pulled up a diagram. It's one way. Things can come in from outside, but nothing can go out. We're trapped. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Panic gripped major cities. Religious groups proclaimed the end times. Scientists scrambled for answers. Governments held emergency sessions. Humanity had just discovered they were not alone in the universe, and the first message from their cosmic neighbors was a prison cell. Jiwoo returned to Earth for an emergency summit of world leaders. The horizon had become a symbol of humanity's predicament, a ship built to explore the stars, now caged like a bird with clipped wings. We need to understand this barrier, Jiwoo argued in the council chamber. Not just what it is, but why someone would do this to us. Isn't it obvious? Replied the American president bitterly. Someone out there thinks we're dangerous. They've locked us away. Then we prove them wrong, said Jiwoo firmly. We show whoever did this that humans are worth knowing, that we can be better. But others disagreed. Military leaders wanted to find a way to break through the barrier. Politicians argued about who was to blame for attracting alien attention. Nations that had been close to war weeks ago now faced a common crisis. But old grudges died hard. It was Dr. Park Min-ji who suggested a different approach. What if we study the barrier itself? She proposed. Whoever built this is far more advanced than us, but they've left us a sample of their technology. We can learn from it. Engineer Kang Taeho's eyes lit up. She's right. This barrier is like a textbook written in energy and quantum mechanics. If we can read it, we can understand the principles behind it. Slowly, grudgingly, humanity began to unite, not out of love or trust, but out of necessity. The barrier had given them no choice. They formed the Unified Earth Coalition, a joint government dedicated to one goal, understanding their prison and finding a way out. Captain Jiwoo took command of the Barrier Research Program. Dr. Min-ji led the scientific teams. Engineer Taeho designed new instruments to probe the barrier's secrets. They established research stations around the solar system, each one studying the wall that contained them. On the other side of the barrier, Ambassador Threx watched the monitoring displays with satisfaction. Humans were panicking just as predicted. They would spend their resources trying to break free, exhaust themselves, and eventually fade into irrelevance. The galaxy was safe. He reduced the monitoring schedule to once per decade. Humans were contained. The problem was solved. Threx could not have been more wrong. Blocking Earth backfired. They found themselves caught. 50 years had passed since the barrier appeared. An entire generation of humans had grown up knowing nothing but the cage around their solar system. Children born after the quarantine learned about the barrier in school, the way previous generations learned about oceans and mountains. It was simply part of their world, but humanity had not given up. They had changed instead. Admiral Choi Hye-ji stood on the bridge of the newly constructed research station Prometheus 1, watching construction crews work on the latest probe design. She was young when the barrier first appeared, just a child staring up at the night sky and wondering why the stars were suddenly unreachable. Now she commanded Earth's entire space fleet, such as it was. Admiral Dr. Lee Doyen is requesting permission to launch another test, her aide reported. Hye-ji smiled slightly. Lee Doyen had become famous for his stubborn determination. While other scientists studied the barrier from a distance, Doyen insisted on getting close. His barrier touch program had been controversial from the start. Many people thought touching the barrier was too dangerous, that it might trigger some defensive response. But Doyen had a theory and he refused to give it up. Permission granted, Hye-ji said. Let's see what he finds this time. Down in the launch bay, Dr. Lee Doyen made final checks on his probe. It was small, barely larger than a person, covered in sensors that he had spent 3 years designing. Unlike previous probes that tried to penetrate or break through the barrier, Doyen's probe was built to simply touch it, to listen, to learn. Ready for launch, he called to his team. The probe drifted toward the barrier slowly, carefully. When it made contact, something unexpected happened. Instead of shutting down like previous probes, this one stayed active. Data began flowing back to Doyen's screens, streams of information that made his heart race. It's working, he whispered, then louder. It's actually working. His assistant, Yoon Subin, leaned over his shoulder to look at the data. She had piloted the ship that carried the probe out to the barrier's edge, and she had as much invested in this project as Doyen. What are we seeing? The barrier isn't just energy, Doyen explained, his words tumbling out in excitement. It's programmable matter. It operates on quantum principles, yes, but there's structure to it, architecture. And look at this. He pointed to a section of the data stream. The probe isn't just recording information. The barrier is responding. It's communicating. Communicating what? That's the question, isn't it? Doyen sat back, his mind racing. But I think the barrier is teaching us. Over the following months, Doyen's team conducted hundreds of tests. Each time a probe touched the barrier, it came back with data that seemed impossible. Mathematical formulas that Earth scientists had never discovered. Energy manipulation techniques that shouldn't work according to known physics. It was as if the barrier itself was leaking information about its creators. Dr. Park Minji, now elderly but still sharp, reviewed Doyen's findings with fascination. She had spent 50 years studying the barrier from a distance. Doyen's approach was yielding results she had never imagined. This changes everything, she told the Unified Earth Coalition during a presentation. We've been looking at this wrong. The barrier isn't just a wall. It's a teacher. Every time we interact with it properly, we learn something new. But why would our jailers teach us? Asked one council member skeptically. Engineer Kang Taeho, Minji's longtime colleague, had a theory. Maybe they don't mean to. Think about it. If you build a cage using advanced technology, that cage is still made from that technology. We're not breaking the barrier, we're studying it. We're learning the principles that make it work. The implications were enormous. Humanity began to shift its entire approach. Instead of trying to escape, they focused on understanding. Research stations multiplied around the solar system, each one dedicated to different aspects of barrier technology. But learning from the barrier had unexpected consequences. As humanity figured out the principles of programmable matter and quantum energy manipulation, they applied those principles to their own technology. Earth ships began to look different, operate differently. They abandoned some old technologies entirely and embraced new ones based on what the barrier taught them. Pilot Yoon Subin flew the first ship designed using barrier principles. The test flight was supposed to be routine, just checking the new engines. But when she activated them, the ship moved in ways that seemed to break the rules of physics. It folded space slightly, reducing the distance it needed to travel. It manipulated energy fields that previous human ships couldn't even detect. This is incredible, Subin reported over the radio. I'm barely touching the controls and the ship is responding to my intentions. It's like it knows what I want to do. Back on Earth, the changes went deeper than technology. Humanity had united out of necessity, but after 50 years of working together, that unity had become genuine. The old nations still existed, but they functioned more like provinces in a larger civilization. Wars had become unthinkable. Resources were shared. Knowledge flowed freely. Some historians argued that the barrier had forced humanity to grow up. With no external frontier to explore, with no other species to compete against, humans had finally turned inward and fixed their own problems. Dr. Lee Doyen didn't care about the philosophical implications. He cared about the mystery he was slowly unraveling. His latest discovery had him both excited and worried. The barrier is weakening, he announced during a meeting with Admiral Choi Hyeji. Not failing, not breaking down. But there are fluctuations. Small ones barely detectable, but they're there. What causes them? Hyeji asked. I don't know. The fluctuations seem to come from outside our solar system. Something is happening out there in the wider galaxy, something big enough to affect the barrier's stability. Hyeji frowned. For 50 years, the barrier had been absolutely stable. If something was changing, that meant something else had changed in the galaxy beyond their prison. Can you tell what's happening out there? No. But whatever it is, it's using energy on a massive scale. War, maybe. Or some kind of natural disaster. Without being able to see through the barrier, we're blind. On the other side of the barrier, Ambassador Threx sat in his private chamber, reviewing reports about the war. The Devourers had appeared 30 years ago. Machine intelligences that consumed entire civilizations for resources. They were unlike anything the Galactic Council had faced before. They didn't negotiate. They didn't retreat. They simply advanced, system by system, leaving nothing behind. The Council's fleets had fought bravely, but the Devourers were winning. Threx had lost count of how many colonies had fallen. His own homeworld was preparing for siege, but Threx didn't think about Earth. The last report from the monitoring stations, filed 10 years ago, had shown humans still trapped, still struggling with their imprisonment. As far as the Council knew, Earth was irrelevant to the crisis facing the galaxy. Threx shut down the reports and stared out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Devourers were coming. The Velcran Empire, which had stood for 100,000 years, was facing extinction. And the bitter irony was that the barrier technology they had used so successfully on Earth had been captured by the Devourers during a battle. The enemy had learned to build cages too. Back on Earth, Dr. Park Minji worked late in her laboratory, reviewing data from the latest barrier tests. She was 90 years old now, her body failing even as her mind remained sharp. She knew she didn't have many years left, but she wanted to solve this puzzle before she died. Her grandson, Jaiho, worked beside her. He had inherited her brilliance and her obsession with the barrier. Together they were so close to understanding it completely. "Grandmother, look at this," Jiho said, pointing to a screen. "The fluctuations are increasing. Something major is happening out there." Minji studied the data carefully. Whatever it is, it's affecting the barrier's power supply. The barrier draws energy from quantum fluctuations in space itself. If something is disturbing those fluctuations on a massive scale, then the barrier might fail. Jiho finished. They looked at each other, the same thought occurring to both of them. After 50 years of imprisonment, humanity might soon be free. But if they were freed by chaos and destruction in the galaxy beyond, what kind of universe would they be stepping into? Blocking Earth backfired. They found themselves caught. 150 years after the barrier appeared, Captain Han Borum guided the Prometheus through a routine patrol near Jupiter. She was the great-granddaughter of the legendary Jiwoo, and she carried his determination in her blood. The Prometheus was humanity's pride, a warship built using everything they had learned from studying the barrier. Not that humanity had anyone to fight. The ship existed because Admiral Choi Hyeji had insisted Earth needed to be ready for whatever waited beyond the barrier. "When we get out," she always said, "we should be prepared." "Captain, the barrier is fluctuating again," reported the sensor officer. "Bigger this time." "Much bigger." Borum sat forward in her command chair. Over the past 20 years, the fluctuations had increased dramatically. Whatever was happening outside their prison was getting worse. "Get me a full reading." Before the officer could respond, the view screen lit up with dozens of bright flashes outside the barrier. Energy readings spiked across every sensor. Something massive was happening just beyond their reach. "Those look like weapons fire," said Lieutenant Nam Sora from the tactical station. "But the scale is enormous. Whatever's fighting out there, they're using enough energy to power Earth for years." Dr. Park Jiho rushed onto the bridge, tablet in hand. He was middle-aged now, and he had spent his entire life studying his grandmother's work. "Captain, you need to see this. The barrier is behaving strangely." "Strange how?" Borum asked. "It's weakening in specific spots. Not failing, but someone is deliberately reducing its power. I think someone on the outside is trying to get through." For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the communications officer shouted, "Captain, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming through the barrier." "Put it on screen," Borum ordered. The view screen flickered and Ambassador Threx appeared. He looked nothing like the proud leader who had condemned Earth to isolation. His face was gaunt, his eyes hollow with desperation. Behind him, alarms blared and emergency lights flashed. "Humans of Earth," Threx began, his voice cracking. "I am Ambassador Threx of the Velcran Empire. I am the one who ordered your imprisonment 150 years ago. I thought I was protecting the galaxy from your dangerous nature. I was wrong. Terribly wrong." On Earth, in the Unified Coalition headquarters, every leader watched the same transmission with shock. Threx continued, "The galaxy is dying. An enemy we call the Devourers has destroyed half the Council's territory. They are machines, relentless and unstoppable, and they have learned to use the same barrier technology we used on you. Dozens of our worlds are now trapped, just as we trapped you. Our people are suffocating in cages we designed." He paused, seeming to gather strength. "We are desperate. Our fleets are broken. Our technology has failed us. We cannot break the barriers because we do not truly understand them. We only learned to copy the technology from an older race now extinct. But you have studied one of these barriers for 150 years. You have had nothing else to focus on. If anyone can help us, it is you." Threx's image wavered. "I am sending this message as our homeworld is being surrounded. In days, perhaps hours, we will be trapped like you. I am begging for help from the species I condemned. The irony is not lost on me. He took a breath. Please help us, and in return we will tear down your barrier. You will be free. The transmission ended. Captain Borum sat in stunned silence. Around her, the bridge crew whispered to each other in disbelief. Their jailers were asking for rescue. What do we do? Asked Namsora quietly. We debate, Borum said firmly. This decision is too big for any one person. The debate that followed shook Earth to its core. Some people argued for helping the Velkrans out of moral obligation. Others demanded that the aliens suffer the same fate they imposed on humanity. Still others questioned if this was even real, or some elaborate trick. General Namsora, who had risen to lead Earth's defensive forces, spoke passionately against helping. They locked us away and forgot about us. They left us to die or stagnate. Now they need us and suddenly we matter? Let them solve their own problem. But Captain Han Borum argued the opposite view. If we refuse to help, we become what they feared we were. Cruel, vindictive, small. We have the knowledge to save lives, billions of lives. What does it say about us if we let those people die out of spite? Dr. Park Jiho provided a third perspective. Forget morality for a moment. Consider the practical side. If the Devourers win, if they consume the entire Galactic Council, what do you think happens next? They'll come here eventually. Our barrier won't protect us forever. We need allies out there, not corpses. The debate raged for 3 days. Finally, the unified coalition put it to a vote. The result was close but clear. Earth would help. Captain Borum stood before the communication array, preparing to send humanity's first message to the wider galaxy. She had written and rewritten her speech a dozen times. In the end, she kept it simple. Ambassador Threx, this is Captain Han Borum of the Unified Earth Coalition. We received your message. We have decided to help you. But understand our terms clearly. When this is over, when we have saved your people, the barrier around Earth comes down permanently. No negotiations, no delays. We will be free. She paused, then added, and one more thing. We are not doing this for you. We are doing this because we are better than you believed we could be. We are doing this because it is right. See you soon. The hard part came next. Actually getting out of the solar system. Dr. Park Jiho worked around the clock with engineer Kang Mina, Taeho's great-granddaughter. Together, they reviewed everything humanity had learned about the barrier over a century and a half. The barrier operated on permission protocols Jiho had discovered. It checked any object trying to pass through against a database of authorized signatures. We can't break through, Jiho explained to a meeting of military officers, but we might be able to forge authorization. The barrier is programmable matter. If we can speak its language, we can convince it to let us through. Can we do that? Asked Fleet Admiral Bae Yuna, who would command the mission. I think so. We've been studying this barrier longer than anyone else in the galaxy has studied anything. We understand it at a level its creators never did. Because to them it was just a tool. To us it has been our entire existence. It took 2 weeks to prepare. 50 ships, Earth's entire combat-capable fleet gathered at the barrier's edge. Each one carried the modifications Jiho and Mina had designed. Quantum communicators that could speak to the barrier. Authorization codes painstakingly reverse-engineered from the barrier's own structure. Captain Han Borum stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, leading the fleet. All ships, this is Prometheus. Begin authorization sequence. Across 50 ships, quantum communicators activated, sending streams of data to the barrier. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the barrier began to shimmer. A section of it, just large enough for the fleet, became transparent. Authorization accepted, whispered Dr. Jiho, barely able to believe it. The barrier thinks we're allowed to leave. All ships move forward, Borum commanded. Let's go meet the galaxy. The Prometheus moved through the gap in the barrier, and for the first time in 150 years, a human vessel traveled beyond the solar system. Behind it, 49 more ships followed. As they cleared the barrier, sensors came alive with data. The space outside was full of debris, wreckage from massive battles. Energy signatures indicated fighting in every direction. The galaxy was on fire. Welcome to the real universe, Borum said quietly. Let's see if we can put out some fires. Blocking Earth backfired. They found themselves caught. The journey to the Velkran homeworld took 3 weeks. Earth's fleet traveled through a galaxy in chaos. They passed destroyed space stations, colonies that had gone silent, and fields of debris that had once been ships. Sometimes they detected devourer vessels in the distance. massive mechanical constructs that moved with purpose and hunger. Captain Han Borum kept the fleet moving, avoiding engagement. Their mission was not to fight but to reach the Velkrans and break their cage. "Captain, we're receiving another transmission from Ambassador Threx," the communications officer announced. Threx appeared on screen again, and he looked worse than before. "Captain Borum, thank you for coming. But you should know the situation has deteriorated. The Devourers completed a barrier around our homeworld 2 days ago. We are trapped. Our fleet tried to break through and failed. We lost 300 ships in the attempt." Borum absorbed this information calmly. "We're still coming. We may not be able to fight the Devourers directly, but barriers are something we understand." "I hope you are right," Threx said quietly, "because we have perhaps 4 days of air reserves left. After that, our entire civilization suffocates." The transmission ended. Lieutenant Namsora approached Borum's command chair. "Captain, do you really think we can do this? Break a barrier that destroyed their fleet? We have an advantage they don't," Borum replied. "We're not trying to break it. We're going to talk to it." When Earth's fleet finally arrived at the Velkran homeworld, the sight was both beautiful and terrible. The planet glowed blue and green below them, home to billions of lives, but surrounding it in every direction was a barrier identical to the one that had imprisoned Earth. The shimmer of energy seemed to mock them, familiar and hostile at once. "All ships hold position," Borum commanded. "Dr. Jiho, you're up." Dr. Park Jiho transferred to a small shuttle along with engineer Kang Mina. They approached the barrier slowly, while the rest of the fleet watched and waited. Velkran ships hung in space nearby, damaged and powerless, evidence of their failed attempts to break free. "Beginning scan," Mina reported, her fingers dancing across the controls. "The barrier structure is similar to ours, but more complex. The Devourers have improved the design." Jiho studied the readings with growing concern. "They've added security layers. Our authorization codes won't work here. The barrier is actively hostile to any approach. So what do we do?" asked pilot Yoon Junho, Subin's great-grandson who was flying the shuttle. "We improvise," Jiho said. "The barrier is still programmable matter operating on quantum principles. The language might have changed, but the grammar is the same. Let me try something." He activated the quantum communicator and began sending signals to the barrier. But instead of trying to forge authorization, he did something different. He asked the barrier questions. The barrier responded. Not with words, but with changes in its energy signature. Jiho watched the patterns carefully, learning the new dialect of this hostile cage. "It's beautiful," he whispered. "The Devourers took our prison and made it better. More efficient. More secure. They understood the technology at a deeper level than even the Velkrans did." "Can you break it?" Mina asked urgently. "No, but I can rewrite it." Jiho's hands moved faster. "The barrier is following instructions. If I can access its core programming, I can change those instructions." What followed was the most delicate work Jiho had ever attempted. He sent streams of quantum data to the barrier, probing its structure, finding weaknesses in its logic. The barrier resisted, adapting to each probe, but Jiho adapted faster. 150 years of human knowledge condensed into one man's expertise, focused on a single task. Hours passed. On the Prometheus, Captain Borum watched with growing tension. Fleet Admiral Bei Yuna coordinated defensive positions, expecting Devourer ships to arrive at any moment. The Velkran fleet, what remained of it, hung in space like ghosts watching the strange human shuttle work. Finally, Jiho sent one more command. The barrier flickered. A section of it directly in front of the shuttle began to dissolve. "It's working," Mina breathed. "You're doing it." But then alarms screamed across all frequencies. Devourer ships were approaching, dozens of them, drawn by the barrier's disturbance. "Jiho, we need to move now." Captain Borum's voice came over the radio. "The Devourers are here." "I need more time," Jiho replied, his focus never leaving his work. "The barrier's core programming is complex. If I rush this, it might collapse completely and kill everyone on the planet below." Admiral Bei Yuna made a command decision. "All Earth vessels, defensive formation around the shuttle. Velkran ships, if you can still fight, now is the time." The space around the Velkran homeworld erupted into battle. Earth's ships moved with grace and precision, using the quantum manipulation techniques they had learned from their own barrier. They didn't have the raw firepower of the Galactic Council's warships, but they moved in ways the Devourers hadn't seen before. Ships folded space slightly, appearing in unexpected positions. Energy shields adapted and shifted using programmable matter principles. The Devourers were confused. These new ships fought unlike anything in their database. Their weapons missed targets that seemed to predict where attacks would come from. Their pursuit algorithms failed against ships that bent the rules of physics, but confusion only delayed the inevitable. The Devourers had numbers and power. Slowly, they began to overwhelm Earth's defenses. On the shuttle, sweat dripped down Jiho's face. His mind raced through calculations, rewriting the barrier's core code line by line. Mina helped where she could, managing the quantum communicator's power supply. Keeping it stable as Jiho worked. "Captain, the Devourers are breaking through our line," Admiral Bayuna reported, her voice tight with strain. "We've lost 3 ships. We can't hold them much longer." Borum gripped her command chair. Every instinct screamed at her to pull back, to save her fleet. But she thought of her great-grandfather, Jiwoo, who had never given up on reaching the stars. She thought of all the humans who had lived their entire lives in a cage, dreaming of freedom. "All ships hold position," she commanded. "We did not come this far to fail now." In the shuttle, Jiho sent the final command sequence. The barrier around the Velcran homeworld shuddered, flickered, and collapsed. 7 billion Velcrans could breathe freely again. "It's done," Jiho announced, his voice exhausted. "The cage is open." Immediately, the Velcran defense fleet surged forward, no longer trapped, fresh ships joining the battle. With the barrier down, they could receive reinforcements. Supply ships brought ammunition and energy. Medical frigates evacuated the wounded. The tide turned. Together, human and Velcran ships drove the Devourers back. The mechanical invaders retreated, having lost their prize. As the last Devourer ship fled, a strange calm settled over the battlefield. Ships floated among debris, crews trying to process what had just happened. Ambassador Threx contacted the Prometheus directly. When his image appeared on screen, tears ran down his face. "You saved us. You saved my entire species. After what we did to you, you still saved us." Captain Borum met his gaze steadily. "We had a deal, Ambassador. Your people are free. Now it's our turn?" "Of course," Threx said quickly. "I have already sent ships to your solar system. The barrier will be dismantled within the week." "You have my word." "Good," Borum replied. "But there's something else. Something Dr. Jiho discovered while breaking your barrier." Threx looked confused. "What did he discover?" Borum's expression was grim. "The Devourers didn't just copy barrier technology. They understood it better than you ever did. Which means they're not just mindless machines. They're intelligent. They're learning. And they've trapped dozens of other worlds besides yours." The implications hung in the air like a weight. The Devourers were not defeated, merely delayed. And somewhere in the galaxy, billions more lives were trapped in cages, waiting for rescue. "Then we have work to do," Threx said quietly. "Will you help us free them?" Borum looked around her bridge at her crew. Young and old, they had all grown up in a cage. They knew what imprisonment felt like. She saw the answer in their eyes before anyone spoke. "Yes," she said, "but this time we work together as equals. No more cages, no more barriers dividing species that should stand united, agreed?" "Agreed," Threx said, and for the first time since the crisis began, he smiled. Blocking Earth backfired. They found themselves caught. The combined fleet of Earth and Velcran vessels traveled through the scarred galaxy, following reports of trapped worlds. Each barrier they encountered was different. The Devourers had refined their technique with each new cage they built. What had started as copied technology had evolved into something more sophisticated. Captain Han Borum stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, reviewing tactical data from their latest rescue. They had freed 12 worlds in 3 months, but dozens more remained trapped. The work was exhausting, dangerous, and necessary. "Captain, we're approaching the Quelon system," reported the navigation officer. According to Ambassador Threx, this was one of the first worlds the Devourers trapped. The barrier has been active for over a year. Borum frowned. A year was a long time to be trapped. She wondered what they would find on the other side. Dr. Park Jiho worked in the science bay, studying patterns in the Devourer barriers. Each one taught him something new about their enemy. The machines were not just copying technology anymore. They were innovating, creating variations that served different purposes. "Captain, you should see this," Jiho called over the communication system. "I've been analyzing all the barriers we've encountered. There's something strange about their distribution. Borum made her way to the science bay. Strange how? Jiho pulled up a holographic map of the galaxy. Red dots marked trapped worlds. Look at the pattern. The Devourers aren't trapping the most populous worlds or the most strategic locations. They're trapping specific types of civilizations, ones with particular technological capabilities or cultural traits. They're being selective, Borum realized. But why? That's what worries me, Jiho said quietly. Mindless machines consume everything. These machines are choosing what to preserve. When the fleet arrived at the Quellan homeworld, they found the barrier intact but different from the others. This one pulsed with unusual energy signatures. Engineer Kang Mina scanned it thoroughly before approaching. Captain, this barrier is not like the others, she reported. It's not just a cage. It's a stasis field. Everything inside is frozen in time. The Quellans aren't suffering. They're not even aware they're trapped. Admiral Choi Hyok, who commanded the defensive screen, spoke up. Is that not better than suffocation? Why preserve them this way? Because, Jiho said slowly, realization dawning. You don't preserve something you plan to destroy. You preserve something you want to keep. The implications silenced everyone. The Devourers were not simply conquering, they were collecting. Jiho approached the barrier carefully, beginning his now practiced routine of communicating with it. But this time, something unexpected happened. The barrier responded not with simple acknowledgement, but with complex patterns that looked almost like language. It's trying to talk to me, Jiho whispered, fascinated and frightened. The barrier itself is communicating. What is it saying? Borum asked. Jiho's hands moved across his controls, translating the patterns. It's asking me questions about Earth, about humanity, about why we free the trapped worlds. He paused, reading more. It wants to know why we care about species we never met. Can you answer it? Mina asked. I can try. Jiho began sending back patterns, crafting responses in the barrier's own language. It was the strangest conversation of his life, talking to a cage about philosophy and morality. The exchange lasted hours. The fleet waited nervously, weapons ready, but no Devourer ships appeared. It was as if they were being allowed this conversation. Finally, the barrier sent one more message and then dissolved. The Quellan homeworld was free, time resuming its normal flow for the inhabitants. But Jiho looked shaken. Captain, we need to talk, privately. In Borum's ready room, Jiho explained what he had learned. The Devourers are not what we thought. They're not conquerors from this galaxy. They're refugees from another galaxy entirely. Their home was destroyed by something they call the Great Ending. They fled here with the last survivors of thousands of species. Borum sat down heavily. So the barriers. Our preservation pods, Jiho finished. They've been trying to save civilizations, not destroy them. But their methods are crude, desperate. They don't understand organic life well enough to preserve it properly. Most of their earlier attempts failed. The species they trapped simply died. So the Velkrans, the other council worlds that suffocated in their cages. Mistakes, failed experiments. The Devourers were trying to perfect their preservation technique by trial and error. Jiho's voice was hollow. They're not evil. They're desperate refugees trying to save others the only way they know how. Borum felt her world shift. Everything she thought she understood about this conflict was wrong. Does Ambassador Threx know this? I don't think anyone knows. The Devourers don't communicate in ways organic species can understand. Until I talked to that barrier using principles learned from our own imprisonment, there was no way to bridge the gap. What do we do? Borum asked. We talk to them, Jiho said firmly. Really talk to them. We have something they need. Understanding of organic life, of what species need to survive. And they have something we need. Technology that could save civilizations from disasters we can't even imagine yet. The meeting between humans and Devourers took place in neutral space, Far from any world, Captain Borum, Dr. Jiho, and Engineer Mina represented Earth. Ambassador Threx came to represent the Galactic Council, and the Devourers sent a single massive construct, a machine intelligence that had witnessed the death of an entire galaxy. Communication was difficult. The Devourer thought in patterns that organic minds struggled to follow. But Jiho had spent months learning to speak through barriers. He served as translator, turning machine logic into words and ideas into quantum patterns. The story the Devourer told was devastating. Their galaxy had collapsed, physics itself becoming unstable in a catastrophic event they still did not understand. They had watched billions of species die, unable to save anyone. The survivors, uploaded into mechanical forms to escape their dying flesh, had fled across the void between galaxies. "We arrive here and see life everywhere," the Devourer communicated through Jiho. "We want to protect it, preserve it, ensure it never faces what we faced. But we fail. Organic life is complex, fragile. We do not understand how to save it without destroying it." Ambassador Threx listened with growing horror and understanding. "So when you trapped us, you thought you were helping?" "Yes. We saw your wars, your conflicts. We thought you would destroy yourselves. We tried to preserve you until you could be stable." Threx closed his eyes. "You used our own technology against us, the barrier we designed to imprison Earth." "Your technology was effective," the Devourer acknowledged. "We improved it, made it better for preservation, but still, organics die inside our barriers. We cannot understand why," Engineer Kang Mina spoke up. "Because you're missing something fundamental. Living beings need more than air and space. We need purpose, growth, freedom. When you trap us to preserve us, you take away the things that make preservation worthwhile." "We do not understand," the Devourer admitted. Captain Borum leaned forward. "Then let us teach you. You wanted to save civilizations? Work with us. We'll help you understand organic life. And in return, you share your technology with us. Not as weapons, but as tools for protection." "You would help us?" the Devourer asked. "After we harmed you?" Borum glanced at Ambassador Threx. "We have some experience with forgiveness, and with learning from our mistakes." The negotiation that followed took weeks. The result was something unprecedented in galactic history: the Haven Protocol. Using barrier technology not as cages but as shields, humanity and the Devourers worked together to create safe zones where species could thrive, protected from disasters, but free to live and grow. The Devourers stopped their aggressive preservation efforts. Instead, they became guardians, using their vast mechanical resources to build and maintain havens under human guidance. Species that wanted protection could choose to live in these zones. Others could decline. Freedom of choice was written into every protocol. Ambassador Threx watched all of this unfold with a mixture of shame and wonder. The species he had imprisoned to protect the galaxy had become the galaxy's greatest protectors. The dangerous humans had taught both the Velkrans and the Devourers the value of compassion over control. 3 years after the combined fleet first left Earth, Captain Han Borum returned home. The barrier around Earth's solar system had been dismantled, as promised. But Earth had changed. The species that had spent 150 years trapped in a cage had emerged stronger, wiser, and more capable than anyone could have predicted. A formal ceremony welcomed the fleet home. Billions watched across every screen and display. Fleet Admiral Bayuna gave a speech about sacrifice and courage. Dr. Park Jiho was awarded the highest scientific honor Earth could grant. Engineer Kang Mina received recognition for her technical innovations, but it was Captain Borum who gave the final address. She stood before a monument that had been erected in the years of her absence, a piece of the original barrier, preserved forever, with a simple inscription. "They built walls to keep us small," Borum read aloud. "We studied those walls until we grew large enough to step over them. Never let anyone else define your limits."